तद्गणेशाय विद्महे वक्रतुण्डाय धीमहि तन्नो दन्तः प्रचोदयाते। ॐ तत्परम्पराय विद्महे ज्ञानलिङ्गेश्वराय धीमहि तन्नो गुरुः प्रचोदयाते। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम। Okay, so continuing into our Sanatan Dharma lesson, I thought today we're going to go through, or really tonight, okay, I'm sorry to say, it's like even my voice is confused, sometimes get confused because looking out, it's quite a nice evening here, quite dark and got all the stars in the sky, but I still have to say the day. But yeah, so I'm going to take you all through a little bit simpler lesson today as we're going to discuss on the concept of the many paths to self-realization. As if you all remember, the few fundamental aspects of the Sanatan Dharma. One is to live your life as a wholesome being. Then the second part was to attain your true potential. The third part is to find peace or harmony. And here we talk about that harmony within ourselves as a human being, in our body, with our body, mind, senses, and all the cognitive experiences. Then we have our family, our world, and all that exists in our life. And please do remember, one of the principle in yoga we have is Ath Pinde Tat Brahmande. So we in human body, we are the little tiniest model of the universe itself. So we are the drop of the ocean, and then it says that the ocean is within the drop. As the drop exists in the ocean, but the ocean exists because of each of the drops. So if the drops are not there, then you know what will happen. So there will be no ocean. So we are looked at our individual and the universal principle intertwined, and in that intertwining principle, this interlinking principle, we look at the whole universe as one family, as one unit. So our first fundamental dharma, as we were talking about it in the last lesson, is to look after ourselves as an individual. Then our collective dharma, which is to look after our family, friends, and the people who are depending on us. And then we have the universal dharma, which is to do with our earth, to do with our bigger karma, to do with our universe we live in, and all that, those natural resources. And so to fulfill those dharmas, to attain our wholesome potential, Sanatan Dharma offers many ways to attain that wholesomeness, or many ways to attain our true potential. Now, Krishna, when he talked about the ways to attain our wholesome potential, he said there are only two ways to attain our potential, which, in our modern language, we can use the two types of personalities exist. So either you are introvert or you are extrovert. And so he said there are only two ways to attain our wholesome potential. Either we go out in the world and live all that we supposed to live, or we wish to live, or we need to live. So we live our experience and go through that experience. So that's known as Bahiranga Marga. So in more simpler form, we call the path of Karma Yoga, where you do what you meant to be doing, that is, making a family, fulfilling your duties, and also doing your sadhana for your health and wellness. So we have the Bahiranga Marga, we go out in the world. And then he said the second Marga is for the introvert people. So these people are not comfortable to attain their full potential out in the world. So these people will go inside themselves and search for the truth or the realization within. So we call them the path of meditation, path of introspection. And I guess, when you look into our world, some people can live in the crowd to attain their full potential, and other people need to have their closed space, like think of yourself as an artist. You need your personal space to draw the image. If you want to write a poet, you need your inner space. So not just the meditation, but also for some people to attain their full potential, they need to be inward. They need to away from the people, from the crowd, and live that smoothness, live their full potential through that. So we go Bahiranga, that's the path for the extrovert people, go out and live in the world. And then we have the Antaranga, the inward path or the introvert path. So this is the path, you can say, path of meditation, path of art, literature, where we need to go inward within ourselves. So really, then Krishna says, so these two paths, the one is the path of karma yoga, doing what we are meant to be doing. And then the other one is the path of jnana yoga. So as we're going to look at these 9 major paths of attaining our wholesome potential in Sanatana Dharma, I thought we can begin that journey by looking at the 2 most important paths. So the very first path, which is really, to me, I always also think it's really important for our life to be aligned in the world we live in, is the path of karma yoga. So the path of karma yoga, which, and I think I will start with that because hopefully I will talk a very little on that, as we, in the previous 2 lessons, we discussed quite in depth on the concept of karma and dharma. So the path of karma yoga is doing what we are meant to be doing, but doing them without the desire for the fruit, or without the desire that somebody need to look at it, somebody need to come and tell me how amazing I am or what wealth I have through all my doing. So doing what we do, but not sake of the fruit, not for the sake of the name or the fame, and that will be the path of karma yoga. Now, in a beautiful way, you can really say the path of karma yoga is where we see ourselves as the instrument of the divine purpose. And if you take that way, then that will align you with your own skills. So let's say you are a gardener, you are a farmer. So by being selfless, offering your karma, your actions to the divine purpose, then you're not working just for the fruit. That's the first thing. Then the second part, all your actions will be devoted to all that need to be supported from your actions. So maybe if you are a farmer, like typically in the Sanatana Dharma, they always say that you divide your wealth, your crop, your accumulation at the end, in 4 parts. So the one part is for the nature, and that's, so we think of like the birds, the animals, and so you give the part of the grains you accumulate from your farming to the nature, back to the nature. So supporting, there is a funny saying in India that the birds are not going to work in a supermarket to earn money, okay, to buy their seeds, buy their grains. So they got to have something natural provided by people. And it's something, I think, when I came to UK, I thought it was a really nice experience for me, because you will see like my mom, my auntie, they all in the morning throw the seeds to the birds. And I think probably Rob, you would have seen when you were here, like you see all the peacocks and the birds, running around in the middle when you throw the seeds to them. But this is something, it's really interesting because in most households in UK, I've seen you have the bird feed in front of you, which is, it's a typical thing. So that's the share I'm talking about, that the one share goes to the birds. Then it said the one share goes to people who need your support. So like again, we have the food banks now, isn't it? So that means now you're giving the part of your earning to people who may not be able to earn their food by themselves. And then the next share goes into feeding your own family, and so yourself and your family. And then the last share goes into your wealth. So that means you may sell that to bring all other things you need to do if you are doing it for a business. So when we do our karma yoga, it's not that you don't take the fruit, but you share the fruit in all possible ways, with a good heart or with a good spirit. And that's where then our karma changes into karma yoga, because we are doing actions anyway. But are we doing actions just to make money, make living? And on the karma, when we change our actions to karma yoga, I also think of this as Krishna says, the path of karma yoga, you always look at a bigger picture. So you offering your cause, you offering your actions to the greater benefit. So, I was seeing, I've seen really amazing posters in last few days. So you see, you offer your classes. Now, those classes, we can offer them just for the money, or you can offer them because you wish people to be healthy and be well. So when we wish people to be healthy and well, they're still going to pay us. So it's not that you don't take the money. That's what exactly Krishna says. But the issue, if we are working for the material benefits, either the benefit is economic or the name, the ego, the pride, if we are working for those worldly benefits, Krishna said the issue with the worldly benefits, they don't last long. So the money comes into our account. I'm sure we all experience the same. Before you see it, it gone into all the paying all the bills. If you work for the name or the pride, then what you get today is not going to be good enough tomorrow, isn't it? So tomorrow we need more. It's because every day we got to make that ego line a bit bigger, bit bigger. Otherwise, we feel depleted, we feel upset. But if our purpose is the greater purpose, which can be, we wish people to be healthy, we wish people to be well. So, for me in this group, if my main objective is to help everybody understand these teachings and find your path, find your way to be healthy, happy, and attain your path to self-realization, then my goal is not the material. And in that way, as and when we get that nice message from somebody, oh, that was amazing, that, sometimes very little, it takes very little to change our perspective, to help us become well, become better. So that nourishment, that nurture will stay with you for your rest of your life. And this is exactly what Krishna says. So just by changing our perspective or goal into the bigger picture, all our actions will become the karma yoga. So, Rob still goes to the farm, but instead of just thinking I get money, you can change your perspective into you work there, because through that you are offering people to come and get the fresh food picked from the farm. So it's almost like you're doing the same thing, but you're changing your perspective. And when you change your perspective, your work becomes your karma yoga. Now, the karma yoga also has this amazing principle of what we call the seva, which is the service. Now, the seva can be seva or service to your parents. It can be for the elderly people. It can be for people who need your help. It can be for the animals. Now, in the typical Sanatan Dharma, when we talk about the karma yoga, there is a amazing element is looking after or taking care of elderly people, looking after taking care of our teachers, looking after taking care of also the people, what sort of in our Western language, we call these people like homeless. So if people don't have anything of their own, then you share your wealth or your sometimes just your spirit, I guess, to provide support to people. So that is really the most important part known as the karma yoga. then we have the second path that supports the karma yoga, or the second path supports the, is one way or other, is the path of Jnana yoga. So the Jnana yoga is the path of wisdom. Now, in Jnana yoga, you can call it is the path of introspection. It is the path of knowing what is worth to be knowing. Now, I know the word Jnana translates as the wisdom. So the path of Jnana yoga, just to be clear, is nothing to do with how much physics, maths, chemistry, or the medicine or whatever knowledge we acquire. Okay. So all that knowledge we acquire to develop our skills, that goes into karma yoga. Okay. So that's because you're supporting your karma by learning or upgrading your skills, acquiring those skills. Path of Jnana Yoga is more or less about understanding the eternity of our spirit, our Atman, and then its oneness or union with the supreme reality or the divine. So it has, it has, of course, a complete step-by-step process on understanding our mind, psychology, and all our mental agitation system. But the fundamental teachings on the Jnana Yoga through the self-inquiry. So if I was to compose the practices of the Jnana Yoga in daily life, the very first practice will be the Koham. Who am I? Who am I? So we repeat that contemplation, and in that we need to realize our association, our attachment with the body. So that is our very first existence, isn't it? If you think of the physical most existence or your being is your physical body, your annamaya kosa. As we look at the panch kosa system, that is actually one of the meditation or the meditative experience of the Jnana Yoga. If you go further subtle from the body, then we realize the mind, then we realize the prana, then we realize our Vijnanamaya kosa, and then ultimately we realize the Anandam or the light or the spirit. So it starts with the iti, knowing that we exist, our body exists, our mind exists, our ego exists, but then transcending that to know that our Atman has nothing to do with all the drama we live in. Okay, this is in a simplest way I can put it from as Krishna explains in the path of Jnana Yoga in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2. So our Atman is eternal, and I really love the metaphor uses. For the Atman, our body is nothing more than the clothes for our daily life. So, you morning, you wake up, you have your shower, and you change your clothes. So think like, the night can be understood when our soul has enough to live in this body. So then it will leave the body, and then the next day it finds the next body and it lives. So it leaves the body just like we leave our clothes, or we change our clothes every day. So here the fundamental teaching of the Jnana Yoga in abstract, our body is subject to the change or the transformation experience, while Atman has nothing to do with all of this. So Atman would be understood as eternal, will understood as absolute consciousness. So we moved from knowing our existence in the world into realizing that the world, our Atman, has nothing to do with this world. So the abstract of the Jnana Yoga is knowing the eternity of our spirit, our Atman. And please also, when I say knowing, I don't mean like getting the knowledge in our head. We got to experience it. We got to realize that state, that I'm not this. I really like the way the Sadhguru system they follow, that I'm not this body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the energy, I am the spirit. So that spirit we talking about is eternal, is absolute, it's wholesome. And simply Krishna says, fire cannot burn it, wind cannot blow it, a sword cannot cut it, and water cannot wet it. So it is actually wholesome, it is eternal, and it is not subject to all the changes and experiences. And that's the Atman. And I quite like, one of my favorite sort of definition of the Atman is from Deepak Chopra. I think it is in his book on 7 states of consciousness. And here he talks about understanding the Atman in our quantum consciousness or the quantum language. So this is how he says. So our Atman is the subdomain. So why he uses a subdomain? Because the domain has a location, while subdomain exists within the domain. And here it's interesting. So it's like the drop and the ocean. So instead of calling it the ocean, it starts with the drop. So the drop exists within the ocean exists within the universe. So the Atman can be understood as the subdomain, non-local. So that's the second thing, non-local. Why? Because the Atman does not have a physical location. So if you think, I know this is what we say, the Atman dwells in the heart. And the reason we use that phrase is because the heart is the most beautiful place to live in love, in harmony, in peace, in coherence. But in reality, your spirit, your consciousness is non-local. So it is a subdomain, non-local, and then the conscious. So why we use the word conscious? It has nothing to do with the change. I think probably the consciousness word can be used more of the witnessing awareness, because that's more appropriate here. So it is a subdomain, non-local, witnessing consciousness, and then it has the power of what we call the prana. So it's the pranic consciousness. So not only the witnessing consciousness, it is known as the pranic consciousness. So it has the potential to manifest all that need to be manifested. So I hope it's making some sense. So it means your soul has the potential to produce your body. And I don't think there is a much more profound way to understand how unique or what makes each one of us unique. Yes, we can talk about, the combination of the genetic and epigenetic information, but still there is more of like a throwing a stone into the wild. And if he hits something, it's great. If he doesn't hit something, it's also great. So here we're talking about that subdomain of non-local pranic witnessing consciousness, and it has the wholesome potential. So it's also the potentiality. So earlier we said that water cannot wet it, fire cannot burn it, wind cannot blow it, and now we're changing it into more of the modern technical language. And also it is timeless. Please remember, the soul is timeless, so it's not bound to the time. So which I found always interesting. It means your soul will exist even at the end of the cycle. Okay. So your soul, even if the whole of the universe comes to end, your soul will travel with that. And then the last and the most important part, the most abstract part, is the soul is the fragment of the divine itself. So the Purusha and the Paramatman, or the Atman and the Brahman, there are different terminology being used in the Jnana Yoga. Ultimately, they are one. So here, from the dualistic view, so that's where we look at me and you. That's the dualistic view, I, mine, and there. And so we look at the two opposites. So, we look at the right finger, left finger perspective. One is smaller, one is longer. So in the dualistic perspective, the Atman and the Paramatman are the two entities. So I am separate from the divine. In non-dualistic, in Advaita process, then the Atman and the divine are the one. So that is looking at my hand. Wow, I am the hand. I'm not separate from the hand, am I? So the dualistic and the non-dualistic. So the Atman is not only eternal or absolute, but it's also undivided, inseparable from the divine. And then, of course, then we go to work on what separates us from the divine. So the Jnana Yoga says it is our ego, the ahankara, the individuality that makes us who we are. Then our mind. So when we use the word mind or the manas, here we're talking about all that we have learned or experiences, the good and the bad, the trauma and the blissful events, because that makes us who we are, and also the karma and our samskaras. So here all of that is like a shade, like a shadow on our spirit or Atman. So the Atman and the divine are one, but because of the shadow of the ajnana or the ignorance, we're not able to experience it. And through contemplation, through meditation, through understanding, reading, studying, and the satsang and meditating on it, we can remove these layers. And for that, then in Sanatana Dharma, the very next path supports or guides us step by step on that path. And that path is known as Raja Yoga, also known as Ashtanga Yoga. Even though the Raj Yoga is a much more better term here, I know that's the two one. I think maybe it's dangerous actually, as I'm talking to you all thinking about it, because the minute you say Ashtanga Yoga, really, if you say you're going to, do something on Ashtanga Yoga today in your class, probably everyone will be wearing the sweat tops and sweatshirts and, coming into that full gymnastic mode. And then you start like, okay, I'm going to talk about Mercy Patanjali. I think probably if you have 100 people turned up in that class, 99 will walk away within first 5 minutes, because they will be hoping that you're going to take them through that vinyasa, through that vigorous practice. And please don't take me wrong, I'm not against that. It's really beautiful practice for people who need to do a good, strong workout. And it has its place in fitness, it has its place in wellness. So maybe we are better to use the word Raj Yoga. So the Raj translates as the royal and the Yoga is the path of union. So what Raj Yoga path, this whole philosophy does, it gives us a very step-by-step understanding of our mind, our psychology, and then it takes us through the practices of the Ashtanga Yoga or the 8 limbs of yoga, how to deal with ourself, how to deal with our mind, our psychology, and all those inner drama that we live in, and then evolve from that lower mind, the lower drama, into the higher mind or the higher consciousness. And the teachings on the Raj Yoga was composed by Mercy Patanjali, and that is the Yoga Sutras. But also there are few other Upanishads and scriptures. They also describe the path of Raj Yoga or the Ashtanga Yoga. So the teachings of the Raj Yoga, please also do remember, they're not only limited within the Yoga Sutras, there are other scriptures which also describe the path of yoga. Now, what's interesting here also to know that in Raj Yoga, the path of the universal realization is more or less intertwined with the path of Jnana Yoga. So in these paths, when we are looking at them, we are looking at the Atman and the Paramatman are the absolute principle or the absolute concepts. So you can also say that these are the paths of I don't want to call it like atheist or non-atheist, because that to me seems a little bit really unfair, because in this form we are believing in the divine, we are believing in the Iswara, and we are believing in the Atman. So I'm reading few books earlier today. I read through quite a lot actually to do some research on this, as you know, to resolve my own dramas around it. So this is definitely not the path of the atheist or non-atheist. So I would say instead of believing in many gods and goddesses the way we do, or the many religious ways to connect with the divine, the yogic principle deals with the individual being, individual consciousness, and the universal being or the universal consciousness. So the words we use for the individual and the divine for individual is Purusa. So the Purusa also can be used as the Jiva, so that is the individual soul or the individual Atman. Now the individual soul or the Atman is captured, you can call it, or enclosed. You know, it's a little bit like an egg cell. So we are closed into the egg cell with our chittuvartis, our klesas, our karma, and our samskaras or vasanas. And because of that, we have become separated from the Paramatman or the Iswara. Iswara word is used by Patanjali here, which I think probably I would be quite happy to use the English term God or the divine for it. I know I try to use more of the word divine because lots of people may have the problem with the word God itself for different reasons. But here, when we use the word God, if we do use the word God in this principle, we're not talking about the gods and goddesses, you know, that we worship in the very mundane form. So the Purusa, the individual self, and then the Iswara or the Paramatman, the supreme self. And all the while we are enclosed into our karma, our samskara, our sitvartis, our vasanas, and you know, all our day-to-day life chaos, we are unable to experience the Purusa itself. And that's the first problem. But Patanjali calls them obstacles, you know, the blockages between our mind that has the ability to experience and our Atman, the soul or the light that is worth to be experienced. So there is a barrier, there is a blockage between two of them. And of course, through the Yoga Sutra, then Patanjali describes the practices of the Yama and Niyama, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, and Samadhi. So you can really think of the first 5 limbs, you know, our Yama Yam Niyam. So the Panch Yamas, Ahimsa, non-violence, Satya, the truth or authenticity. Then we have Asteya, non-stealing or not taking anything for granted. Brahmacharya, the discipline of our sensual energy or our sensual self. And then aparigraha, non-greed or non-attachment, not clinging on to things just for sake of survival. Then we have the Panch Niyama, which are the observances or the rules to be lived. Socha, the very first, that is the purity. Santosam, contentment, you know, satisfaction, gratification. And then we have the tapas, which is the austerity, a sincere, a disciplined living. You know, you follow your sadhana, you follow your practices with dedication, with sincerity. Swadhyaya, study, introspection, inner meditation, contemplation, and then the Iswar Pranidhanam, connection with the divine. We use the asana to stabilize our body, mind, and our energy. We use the pranayam for purification, for refinement of our inner self, our nadis, our chakra system, and all that. And then we use the pratyahara and the dharana to move inward from the outer into the inner self. And through that journey, we experience the state of dhyan or meditation, where we become one with ourself. And when we transcend that, we come to the state of samadhi. So the samadhi is the state of, probably the English word I would use is the state of self-realization, where you become realized or knowing of your own self. And when we become self-realized, of course, you know, you're going to see the light. So think of like you see the light, And when you see the light of you and the sun, they are inseparable. We are sort of like, I do wonder now and then, it's almost like we have been stuck into the experience of the shadow. So here the Atman we're talking about, that is the beyond the shadow, beyond this space, time, and the cause. And so when we come to that state, then we also come to the state of realizing the divine or the higher self. And in that state, the samadhi, then we attain kaivalya, or we dissolve into the supreme or the highest form of the divinity. So here we believe in the Purusha, the individual self, and the Paramatman. And through the sadhana of the Ashtanga Yoga, all the practices Patanjali and the yoga describes, we remove these obstacles. We clear ourselves, we remove the egg cell bit by bit, bit by bit. And then when the egg cell is removed, I should not say that we become the light, we experience the light that is already there. Because our Atman is light, our Atman is eternal, our Atman is self-realized, but we're just not experiencing it. I wonder now and then, sort of think of like, you are in a beautiful place and there is a garden around you, there is, all the butterflies and there is a beautiful fragrance. But in that beautiful space, we've been enclosed into a little egg cell. So it seems to be dark. It seems to be no smell, no fragrance, no joy, no happiness. And when you remove that cell, when you open your eyes, you see the light. When you open your ears, you begin to hear the sound, the music. So that's sort of how you can use that in the metaphorical understanding or the practice. So that becomes the third path of the Raj Yoga, also can be known as Ashtanga Yoga. I think I'll take a little pause to see if anyone have got any question before I move to the next path. And I think you all are very familiar because this is nothing new. You probably would have heard about this several times. So I can give a few minutes breaks. If somebody want to say something or maybe ask a question, please go for it. If all good, just wave your hands and then I can continue. That's also fine. Okay. My God, how amazing. Thank you. Okay, so then we move from the Raj Yoga into, so as we're talking about the Atman, the Paramatman, so in a way, we begin with the Karma Yoga, which is the path for people who are to live in the world. Jnana Yoga, the path for introspection. And to support the journey of Raj Yoga, the Jnana Yoga, we have the path of Raj Yoga. Now we come to the fourth category of the fourth journey, the fourth path. Now think of this path is really for people who need what we call the adhara, the base or the foundation. They need something physical. They need something solid to find that connection with themselves, to find that connection with the divine or the higher self. And for that, we have the path of Bhakti Yoga. So this is the path of devotion. This is the path of connection. This is the path of love. Here we have the mantras, we have the singing, chanting, all sorts of praise to the divine, to create the connection with the divinity. And I think when I look around, most religions, the Bhakti Yoga or the Bhakti path of the Bhakti Marga is really the key. Like Christianity, I don't think there is anything greater than the wholesome Christianity. We sing the praise, we sing the hymns, and we do the prayers to connect with the divine. So that here, when we look at various paths, that can be looked as the path of the Bhakti Yoga. In Bhakti Yoga, that's where we have many gods and goddesses. So the way it explains or describes it in the Bhakti Marga, in Bhakti, for the devotion, for connection with the divine or with the higher self, we need what we call the adhara. So the adhara is the base or the foundation. See, some of you can just sit there and feel, okay, I am in this body, but I'm not the body. So I'm the source, the spirit behind it, and that source is eternally connected with the divine. Now, if you are abstract in your vision, in your conceptualization, you are introvert in your quality, then maybe that is enough. But then you got somebody like Nyandev, it doesn't work. So, probably my mind does not have the same ability like some of you have. So what my mind finds easy, if I have the statue of Lord Shiva, I'm just talking about my journey now for a few minutes, probably each one of you will have your own way. So if I have a statue of Lord Shiva or the Shivlingam, and if I recite a couple of mantras, I look at his beautiful figure and look at all the qualities it possesses, my mind has found its way to absorb into that one principle. Okay, this is what in the Sanatan principle, Ek Tattva Abhyasa. So if I translate, it says, follow that one practice, follow that one path. And that one path need to be wholesome, need to be holistic. So once you know how, the way to connect with the divine, you follow that path, you follow that practice. So now for me, that Eka Tattva, that element or the object I need to meditate, to focus, is that statue. So if I have that statue, if I have a little temple, I can sit there, I can sing some bhajans, I can sing some mantras, and I can feel my connection and surrender or devote myself to the divine. And that changes my inner quality. It purifies my mind, purifies my ego, and help me to move from the ego, pain, suffering into love, into care, into connection, or into the wholesome being. So we got the path of the abstract or the absolute in Jnana Yoga and Raj Yoga. And then we got the path in Bhakti Yoga, where we choose various gods and goddesses. Now in Bhakti Yoga, just to add one more point, in Bhakti Yoga, we worship the spirit, we worship the gods and goddesses, we worship the trinity of the Brahma, Vishnu, and the Sadasiv. So three principles: creative principle, sustaining principle, and dissolving principle, letting go principle. But then even in Bhakti it says, even the Brahma, Vishnu, and Sadasiv, they merge or they manifest from the pranava Om, Ekaksar. So, in beginning in Bhakti Yoga, you will feel like, wow, there is so many gods and goddesses, and there is too much to connect in the Sanatana Dharma. But as you will evolve in your sadhana, in your process, then they will become less, and ultimately it will also bring us to the same principle of Iswara. Here the word for the Iswara would be Brahman. Now the Brahman, please also remember, this is not the Brahma we talk about in the Brahma, Vishnu, and the Shiva. Okay, so Brahman is that absolute, the supreme divine, or the absolute, the supreme consciousness. So in Bhakti, we begin our journey connecting with, so it typically it calls it, we use the word Ishta Devata or Ishta Deva. So the Ishta here, you choose a form or the quality or the aspect of the divine to eventually dissolve into the Pranava Om or the Iswara, the supreme consciousness. So I hope you all can see that there is a brick by brick that you're choosing the steps. So in Karma Yoga, your steps were the selfless action to give up the ego and to work on, your wholesome perspective. And through that, then you connect with the divine. In Jnana Yoga, you choose the path of introspection, meditation, reflection. Again, so we have taken a different path to get to the top. In Raj Yoga, we have taken the steps with the Ashtanga Yoga, 8 steps to get to the Iswara. In Bhakti Yoga, we use or we take the path of connecting with different gods and goddesses, either through the mantras, bhajans, service in the temple, and all the rituals we do. But that also brings us to the same step where we come to the same Ishvara, the absolute or the supreme divine. And I think that is one of the reasons why or how you see the Sanatan Dharma never had a conflict with any other path. So if one of you come and tell me, okay, Nyandev, if I do this, I experience the divine, I would not have a problem with it, because to reach to the absolute consciousness, there is million ways to get there, but only if we are seeking to get there. So the Bhakti Marga also, from many gods and many goddesses, it comes to the same point where we look at the same Iswara. And Patanjali says that Iswara, if that supreme divine exists, if there is a name or there is a sound to that Iswara, that will be the Pranava Om. In Bhakti also, ultimately, everything dissolves into the Om, and then that gives us the experience of the universal consciousness or the supreme divine, supreme reality. So it may seem like it's a path of many gods and many goddesses, but that path also leads us to the same divine, same supreme, or the higher self. So far we have been thinking or contemplating about the 4 major paths. So let's overview them once again. We begin with the path of Karma Yoga. Okay. So the Karma Yoga is the path of action, path of fulfilling our dharma, fulfilling our potential with love, with care, and with our devotion to the divine or the higher purpose. Jnana Yoga, knowing the eternity of our soul, knowing the changing quality of our body or our worldly being, and then realizing that the body is not me. So it means all the experience we go through is also not me. In a way, we call it we are the witnessing awareness. So we are that absolute self, and that absolute self is also one with the Paramatman or the divine, the supreme real, supreme self. And we know that, we experience that through the path of introspection. So that's Jnana Yoga. Now, to support that Jnana Yoga, we have the path of Raj Yoga, the path of Ashtanga Yoga, path of the step-by-step understanding of mind, psychology, and going through the practices of 8 limbs. Again, we attain our oneness into the divine or the supreme self. Then we have the 4th path, that is the path of Bhakti Yoga. This is the path of devotion, path of service, path of singing, chanting, bhajans, hymns, and praise to the divine. Now, what I found interesting, it says that in the Kali Yuga, in the time, age, and space where we live, the Bhakti Yoga is the easiest path to attain self-realization. And honestly, like for many, many years, I struggled with it, because I do love my Jnana Yoga. I love the knowledge and all this understanding and some of my experiences. I do love the Karma Yoga. And then, of course, the paths that we're going to look into it next week, the Tantra, the Mantra, and all other sort of the secondary paths, you can call them, or the subtler paths, you can call them. See, each one of them have their own quality, their own essence, and their own sort of nature to go with. But the path of this Raj Yoga that we look at, or sorry, the Bhakti Yoga, which is understood is the easiest path, there is a freedom. So in all other paths, I have to put my effort, I have to focus, I have to be sincere, I have to have the dedication, I have to have a straight path. But if you are singing a song, if you are singing a mantra, singing a bhajan, there is already a freedom. So think the way I see the path of Bhakti Marg. Of course, there is a religious conflict. There is a conflict of the faith and stuff. So I'm not saying it's always easy. That's there, and some of us can also have the religious traumas and all of that goes on with each one of us from our ancestral trauma, I call it, or our collective trauma that we call it. So yes, there can be an issue with that mark, that path, but because there is a joy, there is a celebration, there is something in front of us we can talk to, something we can meditate on, something we can sing for, something we can dance for, something we can love, something we can offer without being judged. You see, this principle of the Bhakti Marga, you do all that to connect with the divine, and there is nobody to judge. And this is what Krishna says. He said, you can follow the Bhakti Marga by offering a leaf. Okay, that's simple. So you don't need the money. He said, you can just collect a leaf and place that leaf in the worship to the divine. He said you can offer few grains. So as I was earlier saying, you can just put few seeds in your garden for the birds. To say I'm doing it in the name of the divine. So you can offer some seeds. You can offer a simple mantra, or you can just sit quiet and meditate. Just offer yourself. You can offer your prana. You can offer your energy, or you can offer your charity. So there's so many ways to connect with the divine. So there is already there is a liberation. There is this beautiful force from within us, changing into love, into compassion, and into the service. So there is that quality that comes with the Bhakti Marga. But again, I want to come back to conclude. That means when you choose to live your life towards wellness, towards your wholesome being, we looking at the four major paths of yoga. The path of karma, the action, the path of knowledge, wisdom, the path of Raj Yoga, the sadhana, the tapas, or the sincere dedication into the yogic practices. And then we have the path of bhakti, the devotion or connection with the divine through our service to the divine cause, and singing and all the rituals that we may do in that system. So I think let's take a pause again, because I hope that's showing you all there's a multi-dimensional ways to connect with the divine. And some of us may also feel there is a time where you feel drawn to the Jnana Yoga. There is a time where you feel drawn to the Bhakti. There is a time when you feel drawn to the Karma, and also the Hatha Yoga and all other paths. And that is what really makes the Sanatana Dharma beautiful. So the Sanatana Dharma is not this or that. It is this and that. So you can choose from all that exist. You can choose your path every day. You can choose your practices every day. And once we've chosen that path, I guess we need to follow that path. We need to follow the practices with the virya. So that's the vitality, the enthusiasm, you can call it the fire. We need to have that fire in our belly, that we wish to follow that path. So that's the virya. Then we have the sthirta. So our faith, our sort of believing in something. You see, if you don't believe in something and you visit a temple or a church, it probably will make you feel stressed more than feeling a sense of connection with the divine. So the srita, believing in something, either you do your asana, your pranayam, your surya namaskar, your prayer. If you don't believe in it, it's going to give you a headache instead of feeling, oh, I'm glad I did it. So the srita, so the virya, srita. And then the third one we have is the karuna, kindness or compassion. Because the karuna, when we begin to practice compassion, it brings a sense of belonging. You see, if I don't have the karuna or the compassion in me, it creates a sense of duality. It creates anger, it creates comparison, it creates that battle constantly. But when you practice karuna or the compassion, kindness, instead of fighting, your hands become like this. And that brings us to the fourth element in all these paths is known as dana. So the dana is the charity or offering or giving. Giving what we are meant to be giving. So, in that process, the satsangs for me would be understood as my offering. So when you teach your class, that will be also seen as your offering to people to be well. So dan can be again a financial support, it can be emotional support, it can be your time, your energy, your service, or sharing your wisdom. So offering, sharing what you have is almost like sort of like thinking of that as a principle of living wealth, living abundance. And that's what I wish. I hope we all keep doing all these little steps in our everyday life to connect with ourselves, with love, with happiness, with that inner peace, and also connect with the higher or the divine self. We can take a question or two if anyone of you wish to have some. Sounds like I did not talk much on the Mona today, is it? So everyone's like, okay, now we're going to stay silent. That's fine. Okay, well, if are you saying something? So if you do, then please you need to unmute. Otherwise, it's fine. Yeah. Anything from anybody else? Nope. Shall we close for tonight then, if that's okay? If that's enough for everybody to digest? Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu sarve janaha sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Namaste, everyone. Lots of love. Good night. See you all for the next lesson.